Hello YouTube, and I'm back with another video. I hope you're all staying safe from the coronavirus. I'm literally isolated inside my house right now. Make sure you get lots of toilet paper too. Anyway, today we're going to go over how you can set up your Windows Server 2016 operating system to become a domain controller and run Active Directory on it. If you are curious as to what Active Directory is or what a domain controller is, Active Directory is a directory service made by Microsoft for Windows Server 2000 to the current Windows Server we have today. In essence, Active Directory is a database that can create things such as containers, organizational units, objects, and many more things. Many sysadmins use Active Directory as well as group policy to assign rights to users, create temporary passwords, reset passwords, create logon and logoff times, and many more things of that nature. In fact, Active Directory is actually moving to the cloud now for companies to manage. The Active Directory database will still exist and it will work as it always has, but it will be run on a cloud for storage for convenience sake in the future. Active Directory also uses Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or LDAP, which is Microsoft's version of Kerberos and DNS. A server running Active Directory Domain Services, or ADDS for short, is called a domain controller. There can be many domain controllers, but most of them are created remotely instead of locally. So, without all of that out of the way, let's get started. So starting off, I have a Windows Server 2016 virtual machine up here just for demonstration purposes. First thing you'll notice is the server manager. When you first install Windows Server 2016, this will be here. Keep in mind these things on the left, these tabs, because this will be important later. These tabs up here will be important later as well. But first, what we need to concentrate on is the command prompt. So let's open up the command prompt. And so what we're going to do with this is we're going to set a static IP address. Generally, you want to set up a static IP address on a server that has constant access, because if someone like a sysadmin is trying to access a file, you don't want that IP address to change while they're trying to access that file. So what you're going to do is type in ipconfig/all. And this will show a lot of different things, mainly IPv6 and IPv4 prefixes. There's a lot of bridge connections here from Ethernet and other VMs. Trying to find it here. So we want to keep in mind certain things here, like the IPv4 address, the subnet mask, and we also want to keep in mind the default gateway, which is an IPv6 address. So when we go over here, right click this and hit Open Network and Sharing Center. You can hit Change Adapter Settings here, and you'll notice here that there's Ethernet 0. And it could say Wi-Fi as well, but in this case mine's Ethernet. So you're going to right click it and hit Properties. And you're going to go down to Internet Protocol version 4, IPv4, hit Properties. This is the part where we assign the static IP address. So keep in mind what we have here on the command prompt. Hit this and say use the following IP address. Generally, when you're setting up a static IP address, you're going to want to leave everything the same except for like the last number. So we'll put 73 instead of 72. So yeah, 192.168.0.73. And the subnet mask is going to remain the same, as well as the default gateway. 192.168.0.1. I hate when this happens. .1. Okay, just hit OK. Close. Everything works, but you know, just in case You want to make sure everything has changed. Let's type in the command once again, clear this, cls, ipconfig/all. And as you can see here, the IP address has changed to what we set it as, but everything else remained the same. Alright, so the next thing you'll want to do is actually open up the server manager. So remember when I said these tabs will be important later? Well, there's a lot of different things you're going to notice here. When you have tools, we want to access Active Directory through tools. It's going to say something like Active Directory users and computers. As you can see, that's not here right now. So what we need to do is we need to install that server role. So we go to Manage, Add Roles and Features, and then we hit Next, and make sure this is a role-based or feature-based installation. Usually you only have one server pool, and yeah, that's about it. So go on to the next thing, and we're going to want to install Dds Add Features. And keep in mind the description. This actually stores very important information, like Active Directory Domain Services stores information about objects on the network and makes this information available to users and network administrators. ADDS uses domain controllers to give network users access to permitted resources anywhere on the network through a single logon process. So this actually gives you quite a bit useful information that most people don't really pay attention to. Don't worry about the features. This isn't a feature installation. Gives you some information about that. Hit Next, confirmation. We don't really need to restart the server, so we'll just hit install. And it can take quite a while to install, so I will stop recording and I will come back when it's done installing. So once you actually have it installed, don't click close yet. You're going to want to promote the server to a domain controller, and like I said before, a domain controller is essentially a Windows Server operating system that has Active Directory installed on it. So we're going to hit this, and these two options are useful for whenever you actually have Active Directory installed and a forest installed. But since we don't have any of that, we'll hit add a new forest and a new domain name. I'll name mine hacklabs.com. Just something I thought up. Generally, you have different options here, Windows Server 2008, 2012, etc. You're just going to want to leave it on whatever Windows server you have. In this case, I have Windows Server 2016. Leave this stuff the same, except for the DSRM password. You're going to want to type that in. Just in case anything happens to Active Directory, you will have a password to go back into the Windows Server to fix any issues you have. So this is practically a security measure. So just type in a password, any password, hit next. So now we have DNS delegation. We don't really need to enable DNS delegation since this is our first Active Directory forest we're creating and we're installing Active Directory for the first time. It even says here a delegation for this DNS server can't be created because the parent zone can't be found. So we haven't created a parent zone yet. So how are we going to create a child zone, right? So we don't need to do that. The NetBIOS domain name, that's basically just the DNS domain name. It's HackLabs, so that's good. It says specify the location of the Active Directory Domain Services database, log files, and sysfile. All of these files and folders, they're all by default created for the database, log files, and sysfile folder, so we're good here. Review all of the options we enabled here. All of it looks good to me. If you want to export these settings to a PowerShell script, just in case something happens to your Active Directory service, you can. It also, helps sysadmins who don't know PowerShell or people who don't know PowerShell learn how to use it. For example, like the $ enables variables and Boolean values and stuff like that. But I'm not going to use PowerShell, so I don't need this. Let's hit next. Okay, so it says prerequisites need to be validated before Active Directory domain service is installed on this computer. So the prerequisites check, it says all prerequisite checks pass successfully. It says one or more computers don't have assigned IP address. That's okay. We already know that we already configured a static IP address, so we're good there. And delegation can't be enabled, which is all correct. Everything is correct, so just hit install. And so now it's going to install everything as the to the domain controller. So I'll get back to you when it's done installing. Alright, so it actually finished installing. And so one thing I forgot to mention is that you go up here and there's a flag. Anytime you're installing something or doing something, this will have a notification to tell you what's happening, basically. It'll tell you if something's installing, so you can just close out something while you're downloading something, and it'll just be up here in this flag. So yeah, remember I said that these tabs will be important later? Well, now that you have promoted a domain controller and installed ADDS, you have these two tabs right here. When you click on it, you can see that the server pool has been promoted, as well as the DNS. If you go to local server, you will notice that our domain has been created as well, and our domain is on for the Windows firewall. So, just go back to your dashboard, go to Tools, and you'll notice all this Active Directory stuff here as well. So what we're mainly interested in, and what you're going to be using 90% of the time, is Active Directory users and computers. So let's click on that. The first thing you're going to want to do when you open up Active Directory is, this is your server, right, or your domain right here, and you have all these different computers and everything, but nothing's been configured yet because there's no users or computers we've assigned. So what we're going to do first is actually create an organizational unit. Now, an organizational unit is basically just like a container, and containers are mainly these files right here that store things and objects pretty much in the Active Directory database. They're basically objects. So they're really no different from containers. They can store users, groups, and everything like that. So what we want to do first is right-click the domain here, go to New, and then go down to Organizational Unit. What are we going to name this? I guess we will name this my name. And we want to make sure we have this checkmark, prevent container from accidental deletion, so you don't accidentally delete it. So now, if we want to create other organizational units within that organizational unit, basically nesting them, we're going to go up here to this thing right here, create new organizational unit in the current container. Now, let's assume that I'm in an office, a corporate office, and I need to assign two different organizational units, one to HR, one to tech, and HR and tech. So let's just type in HR, and we'll create, let's right-click this again, hit New, Organizational Unit, type in tech, and maybe we'll add a, let's add one for corporate. Let's just say corporate. And maybe even, I'm creating way too many, but I'm trying to be realistic here. counting. So, we have those created. The next thing you're going to want to do after that is create users or user objects within these organizational units. And these basically are going to be the different users that log on to the network. So let's right click HR and hit new user. And so it's going to have first name, initials, last name, full name, and user logon name. And the user logon name for the pre-Windows 2000, it's going to be the same thing pretty much. So let's say we have someone named Gregory Stevens. Gregory Stevens? And I guess you don't really need to type in the initials. And that's all you need to do. You just need to type in the first name and last name, and then the full name, and a user logon name. So just basically try to separate their name with a period. Now we need to assign a password to them. And once we do that, you'll notice 4 different things here. User must change password at next logon. So basically, if you checkmark this, this will make this password temporary. So whenever the user logs on, they type in the password I assigned here, but they'll be forced to reset it to something that I don't know what they have. So this is basically for security measures, so there's no, people stealing passwords in the office. You can't checkmark both of these at the same time. You can checkmark one or the other, but not both. This basically makes it so the user can't change the password. Password never expires. Account is disabled. And just hit finish. Tech. I probably won't use all of these OUs. They're just for demonstration purposes. Tech, new, user, same thing. Just type in something. Same process, first name, last name, full name, user logon name, password, and user must change password, next logon, next, finish. Alright, so we just created 2 different users, one in HR and one in tech. So after we created users and OUs, the next thing we're going to want to do is actually create a group. So create a group, go to the OU you want to create the group in, or the container, hit new group. And so what are groups? Groups are basically, it basically stores a whole bunch of different Active Directory objects such as users and computers into one big bunch, and it can link them to other OUs as well. So let's just name this hack_labs, and 90% of the time you're going to want to set it as global security. This is just for scopes and security types. So once we have that, we're just going to hit OK. And that's how you create groups. And let's, for the heck of it, let's create another group. And let's name this HackLabs2, hit OK. So that's how you create groups. So there's many other things you can do as well after creating groups. You can also interact with the users by, you can rename users. So if you don't want Fred Herbert or Fred Herberts, you can rename that and hit enter. And you can also reset a user's password by going to properties, and you can also, whenever you're in the properties, you can show like when the account expires and everything like that, their logon hours. You can modify their logon hours. So if I only wanted a user to be logged on until 6 to 8 p.m., I would drag this out like that. Sunday through Saturday, and that I would permit them from being able to log on at those certain times. And you can also do other things too, like remote control, and if you actually look here, you can see that this user is a member of the domain users group. So I'm not going to apply any of that. So if you want to add a user to a group, what you need to do is you can either go to properties and go to member of and add, and then advanced, or you can just hit right click and add to a group. So I'm going to hit advanced, find now, and we want to add this group, we want to add this user to let's check here, Hack Labs 2. So add to a group, advanced, find now. Let's try to find Hack Labs 2. And we hit OK. Check names to verify that name is correct. And you can also type in other things as well, like Hack Labs. And yeah, you can verify that, but we're not going to add them. We're just going to add it to Hack Labs 2. So hit OK, and it says the operation was successfully completed. So those are the two ways of adding a user to a group. So yeah, that's about all there is to Active Directory. I mean, there's quite a bit more to it, but that's basically the basics of it. You can manage Active Directory through PowerShell, and you know we'll go over that in another video if you guys want that, and give you a little sneak peek here if you want. Man, I don't know why VMware is being like this. And you want to make sure that you open up PowerShell with administrative rights, otherwise this won't work. Get Active Directory user filter. So this basically is saying get the Active Directory user, and it filters out any user that's named Fred. Oh, I guess it can't find it. Name dash like Fred. So I don't know why this didn't work, but usually what this command would do is it would get an Active Directory user, it would try to find an Active Directory user, and it would filter out any name that's like Fred, and it'll list all of the names out that are like Fred. And so, you know, that's one of the many commands out there you can use with PowerShell to interact with the Active Directory environment. But other than that, that's basically it. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.